just before we delve into like kind of how to use it, I did just want to touch around some kind of ethics and like safety things to bear in mind in relation to using it, particularly depending on the environment you're using it. So a couple of ethics to consider. There was big conversations last time we were doing this around like the sustainability of AI and the like, you know, the impact that it's having. It does have a very significant impact on the environment. And the big thing predominantly is around image generation, but it's not exclusive to image generation. So the core ethical issue is kind of responsibility in terms of how we're using it. And I would think for us as ADHDers, like we're using it to help us function. We're not generating a load of images for the fun of it. So I would think the way we're using it is quite ethical, but just to maybe consider, you know, making pictures of your dog doing the dishes isn't probably the most ethical thing to be using it for, but making a to-do list to help you get your packing done is ethical, I would think. So just as a kind of consideration. And then just a couple safety things. I say safety, I didn't really know how else to phrase it. In relation to data, in terms of what you are sharing, obviously the more you share, the more effective it is, but just be very mindful of what you are sharing with it, because that's then your data that you've shared. So I know Lisa put in that she was a writer, so I obviously have to write stuff for my PhD, so I'd be very conscious of what writing I share into the AIs. So I will share it, say, within my university one, because it's protected, but if I put that into ChatGPT, it's not, and it's like in the ether. So any of my like original work or original ideas are out there then. So just be really mindful of like what you're sharing and kind of where your data is going, particularly if you're kind of maybe working freelance or it's any kind of important original work. I think is kind of just quite important to bear in mind. And then just some kind of considerations as well in terms of like kind of if you're using it particularly in work, it may be considered to be in breach of your kind of data policy in work. I think most workplaces are trying to bring in policies specific to AI, but I think because AI is moving so quickly, the policies are becoming out of date very quickly as well. In an educational context, it can be considered to be like gross misconduct, and you can be required to repeat a year or whatever. I overheard some, I think they were undergrad students who recently, just when I was in the uni, they had to repeat a full academic year because they'd submitted an assignment that was, I don't know if the full thing was done on AI, but there was issues around an assessment being submitted on AI. So just be really careful with that. Job application scrutiny, again, this is kind of a little bit of whispers and through the grapevine. Some employers can have allegedly screening tools that can tell if your application has been generated with AI, or they can kind of tell, and they can kind of, that can rule you out. But in terms of detection, that's why I'm kind of saying it's kind of Chinese whispers in relation to the job application. There isn't official software that can fully say this is 100% AI. It can kind of say it's likely to be AI, but it can't fully detect AI yet. So this is obviously, I work in education, so it's kind of a problem we're coming up against at the minute. It's kind of evolving and changing, but currently there's nothing that can definitively tell you. And then in relation to kind of just your actionable advice, it is constantly changing at the minute. Like literally only this week, Google released this new image generation. I think it's called like Banana AI or something really random. But the images on that are so good, you actually can't tell they're AI, whereas previous images, you could tell straight away they were AI, but they're now very real. So there's constant changes. So I would just seek clarification if you're looking to use it in work, and just be like, can I use it for this? Can I not? And just kind of get clarification on it in terms of what you can use it for. So just in relation to AI and like ADHD, so obviously we're all kind of in the, you know, we're living the experience of kind of the current climate in the UK with AI or with ADHD, and it's grim depending on where you are. So we've got long wait lists, we've got some clinics that have closed their doors, we've got issues getting medication, access to work, funding, like, you know, there's a real lack of support, particularly if you're like a late diagnosed adult, which I'm kind of assuming a lot of us are. It's quite a, you know, it can be really upsetting at times to kind of consider that we've waited our whole lives for a diagnosis, and then you're kind of like, okay, off you go with that now and do what you want, and getting very little help for it. So in terms of ways we can be using it, so obviously these are just some things that I've touched upon. So whether, as I said, you're self-diagnosed or you're on a wait list, what ways are you currently using AI? Like, are you using it at all for your ADHD, or are you just using it, say, for work? The big thing I really like about AI is obviously it's free and it's accessible, whilst there are obviously ones that you can pay for. So again, I think that would be something you can consider yourself in terms of how useful you find it as a tool. But it can help with your executive functions on like a daily basis. And it can ultimately, if you're using it kind of the right way or in ways to help with that, it will make you ultimately more productive and I suppose kind of function. I'm using this because, you know, it's problematic, better in a workplace. Like, it'll help you kind of get your work done in kind of a more efficient manner. So a couple of I've kind of just broken these down into like very generic ones, and then I kind of wanted to prioritize on like how to, in terms of like how to use different ones. So obviously you can use it for like planning and prioritizing. So you can set up like auto scheduling. So I know for my Google, if I'm responding to an email, it will say you're free at this time. Do you want to put in your appointment at this time? I don't find Copilot to be quite as effective at doing it. It can do it, but I think Google just seems to be a little bit better with it. Obviously to break tasks down. So like if I'm given a big task to do in work, I'll ask for that broken down into like smaller, slightly more manageable steps. And to be aware of your energy levels, but more specifically what tasks you find slightly more draining. So this can also be quite useful if you start to use your calendar. You can see how long it's taken you to do things, and then you're kind of can learn to work with your energy. So if something is slightly more energy consuming or energy draining, you can give that more time, but also then you can put it in a time that works better for your brain. And then one thing that I think is fabulous for planning and prioritizing is like a brain dump organization. So if I have like loads of ideas and I don't know how to group them or how to organize them, I will just like put a full list in. Because as we know, to-do lists are not our friend. I will put that list into AI and be like, help me organize this list, help me prioritize it, what's going to take me the longest amount of time. And that can be quite a useful one. Just even like I did it for like Christmas shopping or something recently, being like, how far in advance do I need to start this or whatever? And it could break it all down for me, which was quite nice. Because sometimes things like that can just feel really overwhelming. And then working memory is another fabulous way you can be using AI. So obviously all of your, whether it's Teams or Google, can automatically record and transcribe your meeting. But then further to that, and I think Google probably does this better than Teams, but you can then pop that transcript into Copilot and get a summary of that meeting. And what I always like to add in is, give me this in an ADHD friendly way, so that you'll get it in like bullet points, or just a way that you're not having to read through reams of things. But again, this is also something to bear in mind in terms of a reasonable adjustment in a workplace. I think every workplace should be having all meetings recorded and transcribed for exactly that reason. Like, I think we, you know, particularly if you're someone like, I only teach 2 days a week, so I miss our team meetings, so then I have to catch up, and having it recorded and transcribed makes that much easier. Contextual information retrieval. So that's obviously depending on what you're doing, when you're doing, and if, say, you've covered it before and you need to come back to it. So obviously Copilot is linked into your OneDrive and your SharePoint. There's limits to it. So for example, it won't be able to search by content. So say, for example, if you have a PowerPoint and you're like, I know I did a PowerPoint on, I don't know, the geography of England, but you didn't save the title as the geography of England, it won't pick it up. So it will only pick up based on title of documents that are saved. It won't pick up on content that's in the document, if that makes sense. Now, I do think that will evolve, and I think it'll get better, but currently that it'll only retrieve what's there. Memory aids, so chatbots. So obviously using your AI to kind of help you remember things and set automatic kind of reminders throughout the day. So this is also where it's the bigger conversation of using your technology as well. And then to kind of have AI generated study guides, or just like general guides. So like, for example, I have a guide made for when I pack, because I go back and forth to Dublin quite a bit. And if I'm like, oh, I know I have to bring this from the last time, I'll just add that onto my list, straight away. If someone's like, can you bring, I don't know, saurine over or something because they can't get that there. I'll just add that onto my list. Then other ways that it can be used then in relation to time management. So similar to what I said about kind of scheduling, time tracking reports. So we can track how long it takes you to do certain tasks. And I know for a lot of us, like kind of time management can be an issue. So knowing how long things take us and then being able to work with that is quite helpful. The intelligent nudging reminders I also find quite helpful. So I have it set up, say, on my Alexa at 12 o'clock to eat my lunch and to make sure I've drank water, because when I'm like in the depths of it doing PhD work, I will forget. But I was able to figure out that 12 o'clock was the time I needed that reminder based on my calendar. So my calendar could say, you're working for too long at this time, like this is when your brain needs a break. And then I set up a reminder on my Alexa to be like, have your lunch now and like take a minute. And then I also think realistic time estimations, I think, is also another fabulous thing to be using it for. If you're like, okay, I need to, for example, put up my Christmas tree, how long roughly should it take me? Because we're always tremendously optimistic that we can do it in like 10 minutes, whereas normally it's about an hour's worth of work. So getting like realistic time estimations of things can be quite useful, because I think although we kind of, I don't know, I just find for me personally, I'm not great at gauging how long things are going to take me. So that can be really quite a good one. And then kind of similar to the reminders and the nudges is kind of automating breaks into your time thing. So the time management kind of overlaps with other tools to have in your box in terms of like visual planners, using time blocking. So if you're, for example, using your calendar on either Microsoft or on Google regularly, Copilot or Gemini can see it and then get a better understanding of you. So again, this is what I said about using the data. Like the more you feed into it, the more effective it is. So if you're already using, say, your Google Calendar or your Microsoft Calendar, it's loads of data to work off essentially. Whereas if you've only used it for like maybe a day and the rest of the week is blank, it's very difficult for an AI to pick up on you and how you kind of work, if that makes sense. So then an emotional regulation and communication. So I know someone put it, sorry, I'm kind of like half keeping an eye on the chat. I know someone put in obviously that they can use it as a therapist, which is another fabulous kind of accessible way to be accessing support, because as we also know, accessing therapy, it's very expensive. It's tremendously difficult to get it through the NHS. So another really, really great way to use it. I'll just be obviously mindful of how much you're relying on it as well, because obviously it's not a trained professional, but in terms of that immediate support, it can be quite useful. What you can use it for as well is tone and clarification refinement. So I find this great when I get a really angry email off a parent. So I will just write it exactly as I want to say back to them, and then I will just get Copilot to be like, please write this a little bit more politely for me. So it removes that like thinking over an email for like hours, which I know a lot of us are probably guilty of. Drafting conversation scripts. So if, for example, you're going into, I had a meeting over to review my reasonable adjustments, and there was a couple of things that I wanted to add into my reasonable adjustments. So it just helps me make sure, like, how can I bring these up in relation to what I already have? So I got it to draft me a script, which was quite nice. Reflective journaling can be quite good. So if similar to kind of using it as a therapist, getting journal prompts, but then also it can kind of analyze your journaling, if that makes sense as well. And then obviously kind of a non-judgmental thought partner, which I think is kind of similar to what a therapist would be in that context. So this bit here is kind of the bit I know I'm after like absolutely blitzing through this. This was kind of the bit I wanted to spend the most time on, because this is where the changes have been since the last time we delivered this session. So we've got obviously like our day-to-day uses, and then I kind of want to do slightly more specific uses that you can use it for. So in terms of like your day-to-day, obviously you can be using it for obviously your executive function challenge. So if, for example, you struggle to like start a task, or you find you kind of put the task off, or you're kind of guilty of procrastination or any of those things, breaking it down into like, okay, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. What can I do in 5 minutes to help me complete this task? Pop that into AI, and then you've got something really tangible that, like, even if it's like an hour's worth of work that you need to do, but just that initial like starting the task in 5 minutes, which can feel much more manageable for us. Day-to-day use obviously doesn't necessarily mean daily use. Like, it's going to depend on how often or how frequently you kind of have these executive function challenges. I know for myself, it tends to show most prominently in work. So like work is probably the most common place I would use it. But additionally, some of the simple things I like to use it for would be like meal planning. Then you can ask it, if it's giving you a meal plan, then to create a food shopping list, because like me and food are just like, I can't compute what I need to put in to make like a proper meal. Then chunk a task into steps. So for example, the laundry, like what are the steps involved in doing that? And then planning my day. So again, if you've got a really lengthy to-do list, or you've got all these things to do, you can say, okay, how should I organize my day? Like, I've all these things I need to do. And then if you say, you know, you'll kind of know yourself intuitively, like, oh, I kind of might work best from in the afternoon or in the morning, like what are going to be the most energy demanded tasks, like, and it'll organize your day based on that. And then helping you to prioritize your to-do list and or kind of whatever tasks you need to get done. I find that prioritizing is a really good one, because obviously plan and organization can be something that's impacted for us. And I think the to-do list sometimes I'll sit down and make a to-do list and be like, it all feels important and that you kind of don't know where to start. So I think sometimes putting it into AI can be really useful, because it can gauge, for example, okay, this task is really important, but it'll only take you 5 minutes. And there you're like quick wins and your quick ticks. Whereas they're like, this task is also important, but it's going to take you an hour. So that can be quite a nice one. And then obviously getting feedback on a piece of writing. So whether that's like a big piece of writing or a small piece of writing, or like an email, or just whatever you want. And another way, like for example, I used it today, in the gym. I've recently returned to the gym because I'm would do yoga more, so would be my like exercise of choice. But I went into the gym and it felt initially for me really overwhelming, because like I'm not used to doing weight training or like being in a gym or any of that. So I was like, I don't know what to do. So I put into AI, like, I'm you know, kind of a beginner in the gym, and this is what I'm looking like. I want to work on these things. I'm looking to train for maybe an hour to 90 minutes a day, and I'm going to train 3 times a week. Can you give me a workout? So it gave me a workout plan. But then what I added to that, because one thing for me when I go to the gym is counting what I'm doing. I can't do it. So I said, this is a real issue for me. Can you give me a different way of doing it? So then it was like, okay, you can do it for 40 seconds. Like, do the exercise for 40 seconds, then take a break for 10 seconds, then do it again. And it just felt completely different going to the gym, doing it that way, than it did for me anytime previously. But again, that was something that when I would have gone to the gym, like say 5 years ago, AI didn't exist. So like I wouldn't have, or well, it did, but it wouldn't have existed the way we use it now. I would never have thought to use it for something like that, but it made the workout really accessible for me today. And like I didn't have to pay a personal trainer for that, and I could go in and do what I needed to do. Workplace then, so obviously for information retrieval, so most of you will probably see it in Copilot or Google, that it will summarize an email or like key information for you. But equally then, if you're sent a document, it will also do the information retrieval. As we were talking about at the start there, Jamie, I prefer Notebook LM, which is the Google one. I think that does a much nicer job. I saw someone put in that Google does the Copilot does the podcast. I haven't tried that yet. I personally don't like the podcast. I like the diagrams that Notebook does, you know, that you can get like a mind map and a video. I like that one. Then email summary and sorting. So it can help you categorize and organize your inbox essentially. So if that's something you kind of, you know, it's carnage and you've not got anything grouped or not got anything organized, it can help you with that. Tone clarification, refinement, which is kind of what we touched on already in relation to like rephrasing how you communicate, just so that it's like appropriate for a workplace. So I think particularly if we're in a state of like dysregulation or like emotionally charged after getting an email, you can write the email in that highly emotional state, but then get it to fix it for you. So, you know, it's also, I would see that as kind of almost a way of like unmasking a little bit as well, because I'm not having to hide how I feel when I'm writing that response, which is kind of not like I'm able to get it out of my system. Meeting participation aids. So then, as I mentioned, kind of having a live script and a summary. So I know Google, I think that does this better, because when it gives it to you, the first page is the summary and then the rest of it is the transcript. So I would actually just read the first page and then the transcript's there if I want to. Whereas I know Copilot or the Teams one does like literally just a transcript. So my understanding is that Copilot with Teams will only work in a browser, not on the app. But I think you can pay a premium fee to have Copilot work in the app, but I haven't done it yet, so I don't know. Because again, I get Copilot with work and with uni, and I don't really want to have to pay for it to transcribe my meetings, so I haven't tried it yet, basically. And then pattern recognitions. So if, as I said, you're using your calendars and you've kind of got lots of data to input into it, it will learn your working patterns and kind of how you work and when you work best and maybe what tasks take you longer. So this could be a nice thing to do for a week. It would be to say, for example, like keep a record of how long things take you for a week, and then put it into your AI, and then it will be able to gauge, say, okay, well, like admin tasks take you a little bit longer. So maybe rather than allocating 45 minutes, you might need an hour and a half, and it will be able to gauge that. But again, that's because you've given it data to work with. So that's the kind of key thing. And it will also be able to gauge, for example, when are good stages for you to do like your deep work. So if you have tracked your kind of work time, like I keep a visual planner on my board, so I kind of know my like golden hours of deep work. So for example, mine's usually kind of 1 o'clock in the afternoon to maybe like 4. Like they're kind of my best hours in the day to get work done. Like I'm not great in the mornings. Sometimes I'm okay in the evenings, but like the afternoon's my best time. But again, if you put that into AI and say, yeah, I did work in the morning, but I found it really difficult. Again, that's data that it's given it, so it'll be able to create a nice schedule for you. And equally, it'll do it for your meetings or your kind of admin tasks. I know for me, admin tasks are just like the bane of my life. Like I just feel they're the things that take up the most kind of brain power for me. So doing the kind of keeping a diary of your week and putting it into AIs, I found just really, really useful. And again, obviously, then you kind of just have to do it once, and then it'll help you schedule going forward. And then further things that you can use it for. So obviously your scheduling assistant, so it'll automatically block out times for tasks, kind of taking breaks, and then focus based on prioritization. So again, this is where if you give it the data, it'll be able to kind of time block for you. So again, if time blocking isn't something you have tried, or it seems a little bit daunting, or you've tried it and it hasn't worked, this could be a nice way to kind of make it a little bit more adapted to you. And then obviously your smart to-do list, so it will prioritize your tasks based on kind of your due dates, how important it is, how much is involved in what needs to be done. And then obviously it can prompt and to help you support getting through that to-do list. Then setting kind of automated reminders. So again, this is where I think just including it into your calendar can be really useful. And then the note taking, again, which we've already done. It's suggesting Otter AI, but obviously now pretty much all of them have an AI inbuilt in that it'll do it for you anyway. So if, as I mentioned, if you're using Teams, it will give it a literal transcript, which is usually quite lengthy, but then you can pop that into Copilot and just say, can you give this to me in an ADHD friendly way? Give me bullet points at the end. And then educational, I've said educational, but I suppose I mean this in any capacity where you're having to like learn or get familiar with anything new. So even if it's like in workplace where like maybe a new initiative's been brought out, or like a new policy or documentation that you have to kind of get familiar with. AI, I think in terms of education resources, is absolutely fantastic. So can completely adapt the way you're learning, which is something that, like, I suppose I work as a teacher, and it's something that is kind of can be quite difficult to get right, because everybody's individual. But then also, I know I'm guessing most of us are in the setting that we didn't have that in school, so being able to adapt material in a way that works for our brain is absolutely revolutionary, I think. Like, I use it all the time for my PhD. It can obviously help break your tasks into slightly more manageable tasks. Your speech to text and text to speech tools are absolutely fabulous. Particularly, a lot of us are verbal processors. So I know for me, say for example, when I'm trying to work through an idea that, like, you know, my brain's running a million miles an hour, you can talk to an AI and it will ask you questions to like clarify and kind of get more information from you. So that I think is really fabulous, particularly sometimes at times when I'm stuck and I'm like, I can't write this down, but I can speak it. And that's a really fabulous way you can do it. Obviously you can kind of gamify your learning. So obviously create kind of a schedule or whatever around your learning and kind of set rewards in place. You can create templates, give feedback, or get kind of guidance on work. So for example, I'm in the process of writing up my methodology chapter, and it's just a bit like boring. So I just put into AI, like, I haven't had to write a methodology chapter before. Can you just give me an outline? And it gave me an outline. And I was like, this is perfect. Like, I could get this done in 2 days now. Like, just having that outline made the world of difference, because I know when I hyper focus and do start writing, I'll get it done really quick. But it's at that initial, I could spend a week just trying to come up with a structure. And then obviously you can create smart notes to read before or after. So this, I think, is a really nice one. So there's different AIs that you can use for this, but I use it all the time for college. Like, if I'm reading a real dense academic journal or whatever, I can put it into a specific AI and it'll give me a summary of it before I read it. And that's quite useful, because if it's something that I'm going to struggle to read anyway, it's nice to get like a bit of an overview of like, this is loosely what it's going to be about. And then I don't feel I'm having to work as hard when I'm reading it. So that's one way I really like to use it. Then how to use AI. So I'm conscious that some of us are at different stages, maybe in our like AI journey, in terms of like how often we're using it and what we're using it for. So I've kind of done basic use, and then I've done slightly more complex use. And the complex use is not as complex as people think it is. So I'm going to show you how to use it. So obviously basic tasks is kind of what we've talked about anyway. It's just breaking tasks down, creating a checklist. So these I've specifically tried to do ones that you can do on a free AI. And then obviously summarizing kind of long, lengthy texts, or even long emails that we get from, you know, Access to Work or whatever, because sometimes the language can be just so kind of inaccessible. As I said, organizing your brain dumps can be quite a nice one. So I just mentioned that I've obviously done it in relation to like all the stuff I need to do on the run into Christmas. Like, when should I start it? You know, how long is it going to take me? That sort of stuff I think can be really helpful. And then obviously just checking your email tone. So respond as you would, and then tailor it can be quite a nice one. So get time estimations, which we've done. So to use, obviously these are recommended goblin tools, but any of the AIs will do it for you. Simplify complex concepts. So this is also where if you come across something that's like new in work, like I had to put in for like taxes recently, and like my brain normally would be like, I'll have to pay someone to do this. But again, I was able to use AI and be like, right, what's the step by step? How do I register? What information do I need? And I got it done in like 10 minutes, which was something I'd put off. You know, like it would be something I wouldn't have been able to do myself before. Draft communication script. So if you're going into like, say, an important meeting, or you can also use it for an interview. So if, for example, you're going in for an interview and you say, this is the role, what are the questions that I'm likely to be asked? And there was a specific one, again, it was a Google AI, but it was specifically for job interviews, and it would ask you the question, you would speak the answer, and then it would give you feedback on your answer. And again, it was completely free to use, so I'll find the name of it and I'll send it to you. But it was fabulous. It was really, really useful. And then just getting a simple morning routine. So if, for example, you are trying to get routines in place for yourself, because I know most of us we ebb and flow with routines, like they're great for us, but then we get bored of them. Again, just creating a really simple routine, but put in the one that you're bored of and be like, I'm bored of this, like, and kind of explain why you're bored of it. And then it'll help you kind of regenerate that, you know, can maybe move things around for you. Agents is the key thing that we've seen since the last time we did our training. So agents were introduced in July. I think agents are absolutely phenomenal. Like if you're not familiar with them, this is kind of so if you have Copilot or if you have Gemini set up in your workplace, you will have access to agents. As far as I'm aware, agents are a paid feature. So if you don't have access to one in a workplace or educational setting, I think you would have to pay to get access to this feature. But obviously, this feature, if you've got a license to Microsoft or to Google, you get access to it. So essentially, you can create your own very specific AI for a very specific purpose without being able to code. So this is something that, again, like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do, but I now can do that, and it's absolutely revolutionary. If you're unsure of what instructions you need to include, you can put that into an AI and say, what instructions do I need to include in my descriptor, and I'll just show you kind of what it looks like. And then it's very much a trial and error. So like trying the AI that you created and saying, that's not really the output that I want. And then you can go back and edit the instructions that you've given it. So it'll take a little bit of tweaking, but it's actually surprisingly quite easy to set up and quite easy to use. So essentially, if you haven't used them, this is what they look like. So it's on the left-hand side of all your AIs, where you get like your chat history. So this is my ChatGPT, and the Biz Vision Builder was an AI that it's actually an ADHD business coach that I follow. She created her own, and it was really useful because you put in kind of what you're doing and what you need to change, but it kind of asks you all the right questions, and like questions that you wouldn't think to ask. Then in Gemini, this is from my own one. So for example, I get session notes. So obviously my Gemini will record my session notes that I have, but then I'll send a follow-up email to my clients as well as giving them the session notes. But the agent that I have set up gives me the email to send. So it'll generate the email based on the session notes, and it will have it very short and like, here's what we worked on today. Here's what you need to work on between sessions. And just, it's quite a nice way to be able to personalize that service for people, because previously it's something that would have taken me ages to do. But now I'm able to do it in like 2 minutes, and it's absolutely fabulous. And then in Copilot, again, similar to where your chats are, you've got kind of explore agents, and then it's in your create agents. And then I'm going to show you kind of, it's pretty simple. So again, they all, oh, I don't know why that's in there twice, sorry. They're all going to look the same in terms of what they look like. So this is the Google one. So you would set up, for example, what the agent is. So I have one set up, for example, for writing reports in school. So obviously throughout like the year or whatever, we have to write reports on the kids, and it's really time consuming. But basically, I've set up one specifically for this. So the name is like student group profile or whatever. And then I've put in the description. And again, if you're not sure what to put in the description, get a description from my AI. So my description is something really pedantic, like using best like pedagogical practice, give me, feedback on this, like something very technical. And then the instructions that you give it, this is where the coding thing is. You don't have to code to be able to get the AI that you want basically now. So for example, in the one that I have for work, I've given it really specific instructions. So for example, to like always keep the tone professional, to give it to me in 4 sentences, to use neutral pronouns, to include a record of the progress, to include their learning styles, to include, like I've given it all these really kind of specific things, and then literally in the matter of minutes, it has generated an entire report for me on all of the students that I needed for. And so that's something like that would have taken me hours to actually manage to do. But again, very obviously that's very specific to like my working environment, but I just saw it as like writing reports is a problem for me. It takes loads of time. So if you're looking to set up an agent, think about, for example, for you, what's the most time consuming thing that you would have in your workplace, and then set up an agent based on that. And again, like you can use an AI to help you through the process. So in terms of you're not sure what to put in for your instructions, ask an AI what instructions should I include, and it'll tell you what instructions to include. And again, then you'll ask your question, you might have to input your data, and then you might find it's not quite where you want it to be, or it's not 100%. So then you can go back in and you can edit and kind of tweak your instructions. Yeah, that's everything. I feel like I'm out of breath and I've absolutely blitzed through that. I just wanted to make sure we've loads of time for questions, and I'm also conscious people are probably bored sitting listening to me for 40 minutes.
I'm certainly not bored. That was really fascinating. Like I loved the last one and I love this one, and I am going to no, that was really good, and I'm going to pass. I'm going to open up the room for questions in a second,
Yeah.
But before I do that, actually, I have a couple of questions of my own.
Sure.
And the first one is, you said that you can do one for feedback on work.
Mm-hmm.
What's your preferred platform for that? And the other one was the one that gets you to sort out your emails. I'd love to know the platform for that, and the one that did automatic reminders for your to-do list. Sorry, I know, like I literally just asked everybody's questions.
Yeah. So again, this is where I think it's going to be a bit of trial and error for everybody. Like, there's loads of AIs out there now. So, for example, the one that's feedback on your work, I would always use the one that's integrated into your work system. And again, that's for data, like GDPR reasons, because obviously if you've given it, like if you've done something in your workplace and then you've put it into, like, say, ChatGPT as opposed to Copilot that your work is in, you've then given that data out, and it could potentially be seen as a data breach. Whereas if you've used Copilot within your work system, it's not.
So basically what you're saying is just use the same system that your work uses, basically.
Ideally, yeah. Now, I
Yeah, cool, that
appreciate
makes sense, yeah.
there's limits to those ones. Like, as in, I'm not particularly fond of Copilot. I don't think it's, I prefer Gemini, and then equally Notebook LM, like the features on Notebook LM you can't do on Copilot. So just to be, I would just be really, I try and stay within the system that you're working in, for things that are like getting feedback on your work, and for things like sorting your emails and that sort of stuff. What was the other one that you asked me?
Do you have a specific program that you can use to sort your emails, though?
No, so this is where obviously you can open it and it can see your emails, and it can, like, it gets access to your inbox then. So
and you could okay, and you would do that through, like, what you said, Notebook LM, or
so if it's Copilot or if it's Gemini, so depending on what you're working with, it can see that then. Like, so essentially it's like you're sharing your screen with the AI, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and then it can help set up that.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, yeah.